I just want Richard to share a little bit from his heart, just about what, I don't know, just you could talk about what you've learned, what church history has meant to you. And Richard's a great man of God, great servant. And I guess he cooks good pancakes, because I see him back there. And eggs. And eggs, yeah. And he runs a sports club. You still do that? All that? Actually, no. Okay. Never mind. Huh?
Church planting.
Church planting. Here you go.
Wow. Awesome. Great class. And I was thinking of a story. I remember being, I was a freshman in high school, and we had history, which was great. Some of you probably thinking like, oh, of course, everyone has history. But I remember when I went to the next grade, there was no more history. They taught social studies, which is quite different. And I didn't realize that until I became a believer, the switch. And they used to have American history, but then American history turned into government. So to come to this class, it's quite refreshing to see history from God's perspective. And anybody can talk about things that happened in the past, but it's always from a horizontal viewpoint. And you never really get what's happening behind the scenes. But I love when Pastor Steve, and we got to really give him a hand, because 3 hours is a long time to teach. It's a long time. A lot of notes, a lot to prepare. But that's really all I wanted to share. But I wanted to read a couple verses that really I was thinking about at the beginning of class. And it's in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, 2 verses. Verse 9, it says, "The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It has been already of old time, which was before us." And Solomon tells us here that there's nothing new. And if you've been paying attention this semester, we see as things keep going around and around and around, and people keep falling into the same pitfalls. But rest assured, there's always a deliverer to take us out of these pitfalls. Amen?
To what he said. In a certain period of American education, we no longer studied history in terms of context and development. We started studying social studies, which was like making horizontal correct connections, and it sort of like, it just watered down the idea of what history was, and American history, and then government, and then those kind of things, trying to make relationships, trying to relate things horizontally. And this is, really, this is really just a way of trying to, for the devil, I think, for Satan and his work to cloud the issue, to make things very gray for us. Things are very gray, not black and white. And, God really defines things. Choose life or choose death. He said that in Deuteronomy to us. So we have this time period that's happening, pre-Reformation era in Europe, and let's see. What is the primary? We can use this space here. What is the primary problem? The Roman Church is right now the highest Christian authority, supposedly, and there is immorality among the leaders. Immorality, and really just, what else? Covetousness. Coveting is happening. They love money, and love of money is the root of all evil. And so you have that immorality, coveting, and people are becoming disenchanted. That's a good word, disenchanted. Maybe I can explain it Like we know this from maybe fairy tales, that, Snow White, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, the Disney frame of reference, but we know that these were put under spells and they were sleeping. They were enchanted, but then sometimes people begin to wake up, and it's not always a prince that kisses the person to wake her out of a great sleep. That's just the way the movies end things. But in reality, people begin to think, and that's why the university system is important to understand. People began to think, they began to see the lust pattern and the avarice, the evil and the greed that was living inside the leaders of the Roman Church, and just the brutality, the lack of nature, the lack of God's nature being expressed in mercy and loving kindness on a consistent basis. Authority had corrupted them. So we had this Roman Church, and then we had the learning. The learning was happening, and the people studying the human reasoning. So this led to, and like I said, this is Rome, is where the center of all this political struggle is going. Rome and Avignon in the southern part of France. This Rome thing is really, these things are battling back and forth. And so the Italians, the people in the Italian area, they see it first. And so the Italian Renaissance begins before the general Renaissance. We don't generally think of the Renaissance as really beginning maybe before 1500, but the Italian Renaissance, this is your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle part of the class. Okay, yeah, because we're going to talk about Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael. If you had kids like when I had kids, and, Mr. LaFlame knows, he probably had all the figures. I remember one Christmas trying to find the little van that they drove around in, and no toy store had it. That was that was kind of a thing. So this is, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's 4 of them. If you watch the cartoon, it's kind of crazy. And I guess they did a couple of movies too. I know because I had to take my kids to watch them and find the figures. But Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo were all artists of the Italian Renaissance era. So this Italian Renaissance really began with letters. Okay, so as the people are coming from Istanbul, what is now Istanbul, as the Turks begin to invade and take over that territory, they rush westward with all the manuscripts, and the learning becomes something in and around Rome and Italy, and Florence in particular. Florence was a great commerce city. The Medici family, Medici, they were one of the first great banking families in the world. Actually, maybe you've been down on, you go through Baltimore and you'll see this little sign hanging around from a pawn shop. These little balls, they're like 3 balls, hanging like that from a pawn shop. Really, this was the Medici family emblem. So this is a leftover from this Medici family in Florence. So Florence, the city of Florence, was really where the Renaissance that later swept all of Europe. In the south part of Europe, in this part, they had so much religion and they were just vomiting it. It was like they were so sick of it, and and for good reason. They had been abused by what was going on in that area, and so these families, this family and the commerce system and the university system, this was like a perfect storm for humanities to become like a big part of study. Okay, humanities and humanism. This begins, humanism. We know this word. It's the deification. It's the making man God. Humanism. Man is Lord. Man is Lord. And this has its roots in this Italian Renaissance that began. Renaissance means rebirth. It's like people were rediscovering their past, really. They were rediscovering what had been hidden from them by the church, really. And they were, like I said, disenchanted. They had been enchanted. They had been hearing the church chant so many things, say so many things, and they had just believed them, and they were in like a trance. And they woke up. And usually when that happens, there's like a lot of wildness that goes on. If you restrain something too long and you let it loose, it goes wild for a while. And that's really what happened. This period of time is marked by a lot of like wild thinking, wild living, and wild things happening in the Italian area there. You combine that with all of the pleasures, the spices, and the things that are coming from the Orient, which has like a mysticism with it anyway, and you got the recipe for what happened in Italy. It's like they are just rediscovering. They started to live. They started to speak only in Latin. They started to wear laurel leaves on their head, and they started to wear togas. We're going back to the time of the Romans. A good feast, and then a good bath, and then a good orgy. That's that they were trying to get back to, that kind of life, What the church took away from us, look at what it's given to us. Nothing. In fact, it's worse than we are, So, the humanities. The father of humanism really is a man named Petrarch. Here's a, picture of him, Petrarch. That is him. He's like pining for this woman that he saw once. It's really a tragic story. If you read some of this man's writings, it's like he saw this woman once, he fell in love with her, and his whole life was really built on the despair he felt at not ever having been with this woman, who was married. Petrarch, Petrarch. Petrarch is really the father of modern humanism. Petrarch, and he began writing. There was no one he could find. There was no one he could find around his neighborhood to talk to. So he just began writing letters to Aristotle and Plato and Socrates, who happened to be dead for many centuries. But are you listening? Are you listening? That's the kind of thing, the cry of man's heart. It's like really tragic. We can joke about this right now, but you can just imagine the tragedy, the tragic nature of this man's heart. And it begins to express itself, and it touched a nerve. It touched a nerve, just like, something touches a nerve in people. And, things that, we don't know how it happens, but it is the nature of humans. They get touched by something, and they begin to think strange and weird thoughts. Usually it's the culture that has created the climate. And the church's failure, the Roman church, I should stop using that word. Maybe I should just say the Roman churches, I could use those two together. This kind of church government, this church ecclesiastical structure had failed these people, offering, nothing of what the gospel would offer, nothing what the early church offered. Even though there was persecution, there was peace. We're going to talk about this a little bit later in the class. The good news is there's groups of people, categories of people, groups of people that continued to present the gospel in its unadulterated form. They somehow managed to get copies of the Word of God in their native language, and it began to express the truth that they read in the Bible and the truth of holiness based on the grace of God and living before God and having a prayer life. And these fellowships did exist. They did not go away. They did not fall completely apart. And that's the good news. So humanities, this great enthusiasm for classical Greek and Latin literature sprang up. There was a rebirth in this interest in this. And so this humanism, man is Lord, began to be expressed. And this man, Petrarch, he was the father of it. And they found that there was nothing really new. The next author, one man that was also, okay, now remember, around this time, so Petrarch is alive around, let's see, in the 1300s. Also around this time, there is a man named Boccaccio, B-O-C-C, Boccaccio. Okay, he also, now this is the fatalism. The Black Death is there's death all around. The fatalism is there. And, he sees all of this. He sees all of this. And he was really one of the first great writers of, what is it? What could we call it? One of the first great writers in a modern language. He started to write, in Italian and from the Latin. But he wrote this, the Black Death had a great effect on him. And he wrote this story called the Decameron, Decameron. This was 100 stories from the Black Death. Okay, 100 stories. Now here, let me read one of these. I say, there was such energy of the contagion of the pestilence that it was not merely propagated from man to animal, but what is more startling, it was frequently observed that things which belong to one sick or dead of the disease, if touched by some living creature, not of the human species, as were the occasion, not merely of sickening, but of almost an instant death. With my own eyes, I saw one day the following experience. The rags of a poor man who had died of the disease were thrown out into the open street. 2 hogs came by, and as is their wont, they started to trifle with their snouts and took the rags between their teeth and tossed them about between themselves, 2 of them, whereupon almost immediately they gave a few twists and turns and fell down dead as if by poison, just by eating the rags which in an evil hour they had been disturbed. So these are the kind of stories that he's presenting. So you see, okay, this man is talking to old dead people, and this man is talking about death. So there really is, where is the witness of life? Where is the witness of life? It's going to come. It's going to come. I don't want to, but I mean, it's going to, it's going to be there at some point. But, that's, so this is, he talks to dead people, doesn't see them, talks to dead people. Petrarch. Boccaccio talks of death, almost focuses constantly on death, really offers no hope. And then we have another man that came about, and you may have seen him, Machiavelli. This is, this is, the reason this man's name is probably in your frame of reference is because whenever there's a political season, this man's name is mentioned. Because he wrote this treatise called The Prince about proper government. Okay? About proper government. Now, what his great idea was that the end justifies the means. This idea comes from him. The end justifies the means. Like no matter what if you can do many wrong things to get a good result. That's basically that's basically what he said. And I'll read something from him in a minute. He said, the worst and the most treacherous acts of the ruler are justified by the wickedness and the treachery of the governed. It's the people's fault. If I act like a tyrant, it's the people's fault. They deserve a tyrant. They deserve a tyrant like me. And that's the way he presented his idea. It was, this is what he wrote. Never let any government imagine that it can choose a perfectly safe course. Rather, let it expect to have to take very doubtful ones, because it is found in ordinary affairs that one never seeks to avoid one trouble without running into another. But prudence consists in knowing how to distinguish the character of troubles and for the choice to take the lesser evil. So a prince ought to know himself, and honor everyone proficient in art. At the same time, he should encourage his citizens to practice their callings peacefully in commerce and agriculture and in every other following, so that no one should be deterred from improving his possessions for fear they be taken away from him from another. But the prince ought to offer rewards to whoever wishes to do these things and designs in any way to honor his city or state. So, it says the prince must always maintain the majesty of his rank. That's the idea. And he ought to entertain the people with festivals and spectacles at convenient seasons so that people will be happy. So this is the idea. Talk to dead people, be focused on death, and kill people, basically. You just kill people, You either talk to dead people, you focus on death, or you make people dead. That's really, the summation of these things. Like, that's the thing. Machiavelli says you just kill your enemies. Basically, if my enemy is going to take me off the throne, I am justified in killing him. And that's because I should be king. I should magnify myself as the authority in all things. Now, Proverbs tells us a different story. Proverbs, really contrasts this. In Proverbs 11, it says something to us as people of God in this particular era of human history. It says, when it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices. This is Proverbs 11:10. This is the contrast. Proverbs 11:10 and 11. It says, when it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, but when the wicked perish, there is shouting. By the blessing of the upright, the city is exalted, but it is overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. So that's a good, that's a good thing for us to think about. The blessing of the upright. When it goes well with the righteous, the city, how will we make our city rejoice? By being upright people. The blessing of the upright, by our blessing, that will be the thing that exalts the city. So when it goes well in the pulpits, when the pulpits are powerful, when the churches are full, then that is when the city is exalted. That is the purpose, that is the purpose of our life here. Proverbs 29:2 says something similar. It says something similar for us to read. It says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. So that's, public government. That's it. Public government is, this is really sourced in this idea, Proverbs 29, that the righteous, are the ones who should be in authority. So humanism, they're searching the old times for answers in the trouble of the present. They're writing in Latin. They're dressing like old Romans, and they have no new answers because the Bible isn't there for them. So, but something begins to happen. Something begins to happen. The human spirit is an amazing thing, and we begin to see something, grow out, and it starts to reflect itself. Because letters are limited, it starts to reflect itself in art. We begin to see the transformation, really, of what's happening in people's hearts in the art that begins to come out of this period of time. The Italian Renaissance things, if you'll notice something, let's see, this is going to be like sort of an art history class, okay? And it's like, it's amazing. I can get lost in a museum for a while by myself. My wife really doesn't enjoy it, except for maybe 20 minutes. But I could get lost in an art museum and just really, sit and look at pictures for a while. And if you've ever seen, Van Gogh's Starry, Starry Night, if you can see it in the Museum d'Orsay in Paris, and all the little stars are actually little blots of paint. It's like it's a very three-dimensional image. And that's the amazing thing in Europe. They'll let you go right to it. Almost put your nose right on it. But it's amazing. And there's a museum in Holland also where they have like a whole room full of Rembrandts, and there's this giant picture of Simeon holding Jesus, when Mary and Joseph bring Jesus there, and it's really powerful. You can look at that for a while. And this is where things begin to happen. So we had Petrarch here. You can see there's Petrarch wearing his toga, wearing his little olive branch on his head, and he's a mess. But these are some of the pictures. You notice how flat and sort of cartoony. This is the early Middle Ages. This is the art of the early Middle Ages. You'll see a flatness there. There really is no depth in that picture. And this one also. You see here there's like not really a lot of depth. It's like, okay, little waves, they're playing chess. They're on a boat playing chess, getting drunk. what the heck, that kind of thing. It's like there, but you don't see, like, there is no sense of perspective there, really. Maybe a little attempt, but it's going to start here shortly. I mean, they're going to start, to paint differently. And in Florence is where this happened because that's where the money is. So pictures are going to be, start there. And this man, Giotto, who is an Italian, he's the first one to really start revolutionizing, the idea of painting. Painting the images, the flat images, the cartoonish kind of images, the images that don't show perspective and depth are not there. So there's distorted Christianity, distorted art. Christianity is flat, so the art that represented it was flat also. And at the beginning of this, the thing that you'll notice is at the beginning of this is that, that most of these artists were thinking about Bible themes. There was a cry in their heart to understand the fullness, the breadth, the depth, and the height of all that God was trying to show them. And so, he began to paint in perspective, paint with perspective and depth. And it's Bible figures that he started with. So here we go to, this is one of the first. Here we see, now still, you see this is still like you still sort of have the Catholic orientation there with the halos around the people, okay? That's just, that's still there. But you'll see like these people are dressed, they're dressed more in realistic. There's a more realism here. This is Jesus' birth. This is Giotto. This is a realism there that's behind his thing. You see the clothing of the shepherds. The angels are there. There's a kind of depth there that you could see, and you could see the perspective. You could see how that manger scene is pretty three-dimensional, to our eyes compared to the flat images that's on this one and the flatness here. Total flat, nothing really, no depth at all with that. But here we see the perspective that's begin in the detail to begin to take a different, turn. Here's another one of his. This is Judas's kiss. Can you see that? That's Judas embracing Jesus and the kiss. And again, you see the detail, the use of color. There's, there's some depth perception in that. The faces, the faces are different. There's a multicultural kind of element that's coming here. Look at the different faces there. It's beginning to reflect a more realistic kind of view of the world. Okay? The church is painting a very distorted view of the world, and so the paintings that were coming out of the early Middle Ages are a distorted view of the world. So now we're starting to get paintings that reflect something more in tune with the reality that's around people. So the art is preceding the spiritual renaissance that's going to come, or the spiritual rebirth that's going to come in the Reformation. The art is expressing that. So the cry of man's hearts will express itself in some way. Remember when we looked at all of the, in the catacombs, the artwork and the inscriptions that were there, we saw that was a cry for people's hearts. Peace and different kinds of things were there. So this is really the first kind of thing. So, so he greatly changed the paint, tried to make people and things in his paintings look real. And so here's another one of his paintings. This is the descent from the cross, or the agony. We see that we see the women, and they're taking Christ's body, down from the cross there, and they're looking at him. That's another one. More again, we see the realistic look on people's faces, the realistic clothing, the kind of perspective there, the background, the landscaping. These things are coming into the artwork. Bible scenes with realism. And he began to teach this kind of mode of painting. to others. Before he died, he had covered many church walls. Here's one more from him. This is maybe not so realistic, but this is the judgment, and we see the apostles around him, the angels there, and we see, again, the Christ glorified. Christ glorified in his picture of what it might have been in heaven. Now remember, there's still the halos are still there. Some of these things are still in their frame of reference. There hasn't been a full transition out of the doctrine that they had received in the churches they had been sitting in. But but these things are happening. These things are happening in people's lives. Okay. So the next person, one of Giotto's students was Botticelli. Now these are the first two real. These were the precursors to the great geniuses that are going to come up in a second. Botticelli also, he was three dimensions, painting in 3 dimensions, and we'll see. This is one of his paintings, Botticelli's paintings. He begins to paint these things, the judgment of Christ. And then here's another one. This is Botticelli. He's doing another scene. This is the coming of spring. And also this one here, this is the most realistic. This is Mordecai. This is a Bible scene. Mordecai weeping outside of the palace where Queen Esther was living. Now there you could see just how things had come along in the idea of painting. You could see total perspective in that door. You see the clothing; it's very real. He's weeping over the order to kill the Jews. But you see the depth of that tunnel there. The depth of that tunnel. The detail on the brickwork there, and that's his. This is what Giotto had started. You don't see any halos in these, do you? You don't see a halo there, and you don't see a halo in this. This is more of a, and this is also a great thing. This is a non-Bible scene. This is like, Botticelli is painting something that he learned from, Greek mythology. See, the trees are alive. The one tree is, and this is the coming of spring. Spring is represented there, and I think that woman in the middle is probably Mother Nature, and spring is the woman walking through, and we see the man over there. It's like, it's kind of interesting. This is one of the few I can show because, some of his other things just leave people out there without their clothes on, and we just have everyone covered up here. So anyway, just trying to keep this class PG-13 as best we can. But anyway, you don't know if people will buy this DVD and they'll be showing, anyway. Sorry. Anyway, but there we see there's no, and this is like, you can see the difference too. What we see like the artist, this is two very different kind of styles here. We see this part and then we see this, it's like no faces, just really, just his total grasp of things. But it tells you something. It tells you something, okay? It tells you something about Bible teaching. Okay, this is an artist, okay, and he knew this story, and he remembered this story, and he painted it in great detail. Like this is his, the whole thing is like, the story of Mordecai. When the order came down, he rent his clothes, and he began to weep, and also Esther tried to send him some clothes from the palace to put on, so that he wouldn't look so much like a homeless person. And Esther was concerned that him looking like this and wailing like this would disturb the king. And we know the story of Esther. She went before the king and saved the nation. So, but that's what it's just amazing to me when I look at art like this and you see the artists of this era. You remember the Roman Church is teaching in Latin masses. They don't have the Bible in their own language, and yet an artist can come up with this kind of picture of a Bible scene from the limited Bible knowledge that he had. So the human spirit this says something about the human spirit of creativity that cannot be quenched. It's like, okay, so I don't know if Botticelli was a believer. I don't know his biography, whether he became a believer, but it tells me that he knew his Bible. It tells me something that he knew his Bible, and this picture reflects that. So, same thing with Giotto. We don't know. He knew that there was women there taking care of the body of Jesus. He knew Judas kissed Jesus before he turned. So these things Jesus Christ and the Spirit of God had enabled these things to settle themselves in the heart of these people. And instead of, there's no newspapers at this time, but the paintings are everywhere. It's like the paintings are going into the church, and the church is like, this is really amazing. This is cool. We'll put the paintings up. That'll be good. Let's put the paintings up. They're a lot more interesting than the old paintings. Little did they know that the kind of art that was being expressed would turn would fire people's heart to find out the reality of the Bible. So this is happening from 1300 to 1500 AD, 1300 to 1500, this Italian Renaissance, and now we have the arrival of really the geniuses, the four great geniuses. Let's see, where do we go first here? Let's see. Who is that? Let me see. So this is another one, a Botticelli. This is another one. This is another take on. Now, see, this is even more interesting. Okay, this is another Botticelli picture, I believe. And this is the manger scene in a different angle. Look at that. That's probably more realistic manger scene than any manger scene that we've seen. You see, we know that a carpenter in Jesus' day worked in brick and wood, and so a manger very well could have been out of brick and wood there. And you see that's the star there is sort of shining there at the top there. So, okay. So this is the next people that we have coming are Donatello. And that Donatello, that first picture was a carving, whatever. That's a piece of work by him. This is really the agony in the garden that you see. You see the disciples at the bottom; they're all sleeping. See that? Peter, James, and John down here, very prominent in the corner. They're asleep there. The one has his hands sort of like that. That's really obvious, right? Where is it? Right there. These are the Peter. I'm just only guessing. Here's one that's sleeping a little bit over here too. Here's Jesus and the angels coming to minister to him. Again, a knowledge. The artists had this knowledge of the Bible, and they're making these kinds of figures, for them, for churches. So we have Donatello. He's one of the first artists to come along. Sculptures, stone and metal, using stone and metal. I think we have another one of him. Here we go. This is Mary Magdalene. You see, this is Mary Magdalene, the Donatello sculpture of Mary Magdalene. And you can see, maybe we can get in a little, maybe not. But, just the look on her face, the agony on her face is, just the reality of that, and the rags, the clothing, and then just her agony at wanting to see Jesus. There's a longing in this face. Maybe we can maybe we can go in closer. Let's see. Maybe that's in and go up. There we go. Can you see that? Maybe that's a little bit better. Is that a little better? But you could see the agony on her face there, just like, this is starting to look like a real woman. Maybe she's even missing a tooth there, I'm just thinking the reality now, but the eyes, the thing that captivates me in this kind of sculpture is the eyes and the look on her face. That's this is what's developing in the heart of the artists in Italy, and they are presenting these things to people so they can see it. So, we understand that God is at work, God is at work in the hearts of these people. So Donatello is one of these geniuses. Raphael, another. Raphael. Let's see if we got. This is. I think this is also Donatello. This is John the Baptist. John the Baptist. I don't know why he's holding a cross, but that's John the Baptist. I think that cross there is just to satisfy the, the Catholic patron maybe of his thing. But that's John the Baptist looking at maybe his lunch of locusts and wild honey. He's probably trying to discern there, like, is that a real locust? Because there was one kind of locust that was clean and another kind of locust that wasn't clean. It was based on whether the legs faced one way or the other, okay, or a grasshopper. There was a clean grasshopper and a grasshopper that wasn't clean. The grasshopper whose legs went in the same direction, unclean. The grasshopper who had legs that faced each other, that was clean. So you had to discern what kind of bug you were eating. Okay, no, just that kind of thing. Sort of like sushi, sort of like sushi. That's the way I feel about it. You got to know what kind of raw fish you're eating. You got to know what kind of bugs you're eating there. But that's this is the kind of art that's coming out from there. This is Raphael, and I think we showed this already really earlier. This is the painting from Athens, in Athens, the School of Athens. These are the two, you see, look at that, look at the depth there, look at that. In the middle of that is Aristotle and Socrates talking together there, and that's that shows the influence of the classics on these people too. So this was probably a bold painting. Again, it wasn't a Bible painting, and where this went, I don't know where this was put up, but we see that there's still, these things. The artists are the one who are leading the way in presenting, the reality of the human figure and the reality and the cries of the human heart. So God brings that out. So it's important. Artists are important to us. Musicians are important to us. God designed them to speak when maybe He could not speak otherwise. And if you're looking at that thing, like you can think of that, that image of Mary Magdalene is not disturbing, but it is sort of arresting in some way. It's like, why did He make her that way? Who is it? Like when you see that figure, it's like it's not like a goddess. They know it's not a goddess. When this figure comes out, the people know that this is not the figure of a goddess. And I can just see maybe the artist, this is Mary Magdalene. And she's looking for her Lord. Where have you placed Him? And the whole idea, the story could be communicated that way. And so God, I think, we just have to say that God maintains His witness through the human spirit. And then the artists that are among us, the musicians, they speak in places where others cannot speak. Minstrels singing songs. And maybe those songs take, a different turn and they communicate it in a different way, and maybe they change the names and they just sing the stories with different names, but the artist still communicates the reality of God somehow. Okay, next one. This is if you're lying flat on your back, you're looking at the Sistine Chapel the way Michelangelo did for 4 years. Because he was on a platform painting all those little figures on the ceiling there in the Sistine Chapel, which was the Pope's private, personal chapel. Okay? Like you don't go into the Sistine Chapel in these days unless you're invited. And so in there is, all these figures on the ceiling. Yes? I have a couple I'm going to zoom in on a couple of those things. Here's some of the things. There we see, this is the judgment. The judgment. These are a couple of scenes focused in, like going up in there. There you see the one that's really sort of interesting. This really shows, like you see here, down here in the corner, like an empty soul, like here. Like someone trying to bring that, you see, he's just like gone. Now, this more reflects sort of like the doctrine of purgatory that's being preached at that time. Because like this person is like ready to fall, and some of these people don't know where they're going. We know that that's not true about hell. and they're just waiting for this, and we see that Mary, the mother of Jesus, is there next to Jesus. So it's sort of like this is more, the Pope's commissioning of Michelangelo to paint these figures. He's painting more of the doctrine there. This is another Michelangelo. This is, again, we see that the church is starting to influence the artwork, because this is more of a glorification of Mary, maybe, than of Jesus. But this is the Jesus on the lap of Mary after his death. Again, you can see there that that there is still, they don't really understand how badly Jesus was beaten. He still looks kind of neat and clean, and the nail marks in his hands are very tiny, very tiny there, I think the picture of the glorified Savior, this is one of the things that, there is a statue at Hopkins, I don't know if you know that, there's a statue in Hopkins that was carved out of one piece of solid marble. It's there, Jesus opening in the hospital there. And it was commissioned by the doctors at the time, that they understood the connection between the spiritual and the chemical and scientific element of healing. The board of directors of Johns Hopkins Hospital, they have this statue of Jesus. You can still see it. It's there. It's one of its toes is kind of worn away, because so many people have come by and touched it. And people still go there every day and they touch it. But it's carved out of one solid piece of marble. And but this is Michelangelo's work, there on that. And I think another one here. This is Michelangelo's The David. This is his, that you could see the, that picture, a ruddy man, the David. Look at the eyes and the hair there, the detail that's there. We could see this is the kind of thing that was, coming, coming from, from his heart. And maybe we just try and go in a little bit. I don't know how good we get on this, but these things we can see. You can see in the center here, this is like Adam and Eve, the creation, the fall. You can read if you're, here's the creation of Adam. This is Genesis 1 and 2. This is Eve being deceived by the serpent. This is Adam and Eve being cast out of the garden. And you can see those three scenes are portrayed there. So in the heart of the artist, he's trying to explain biblical truth, even to the Pope. If he would just look up, he would see maybe biblical truth in his private, personal, thing there. Okay, the last one. Now, I know that you know Leonardo da Vinci, and you've probably seen hundreds and hundreds of pictures of Mona Lisa, But this is Leonardo da Vinci had like a real fascination with the face and the countenance. He believed really in the biblical principle that a man's countenance testifies as to what's in his heart. So you can see the old picture of the old man there and a young man there, and there are hundreds and hundreds of drawings by Leonardo da Vinci that show his genius in terms of anatomy and his genius also of invention. He would invent. He made drawings of a tank, of like a military tank. It's like really cool looking. And then also he drew a picture of of a parachute that he did. But the face, just to show, this is the faces of an old man and a young man, obviously. And this is the face of Christ as he went to the cross. This is just the, as he's going to the cross. And you can see just the intensity, that the artist put into this drawing, and just what was there. So I show these things, because, we're coming out of the Dark Ages, and this is the witness of God. This is the first wave of the witness of God in this Italian Renaissance. We see that, okay, people are studying letters, but they don't have so much of the Bible to produce yet. That'll happen soon, and we'll talk about that after our break here. But the artists really began this wave of introducing people to the characters of the Bible. And so their hearts will be stirred when the Bible's available in their own language. And so, this will happen in other parts of Europe later on, but in Italy, the artists began to really project these Bible scenes in their drawings, in their paintings, in their sculptures, and it began to turn people's thoughts toward heaven in the right way. Okay, all right, so that's enough for right now. Let's take a break. We'll be back at 1:15. Okay, thank you.